In the small town of Maplewood, Sarah strolled through the local café one sunny afternoon. She brushed her long hair behind her ear, the warmth of the sun casting a soft glow on her face. The café buzzed with the chatter of friendly townsfolk and the satisfying sound of espresso machines working hard. Yet in the corner sat a man wearing a large, odd hat. Its bright colors swirled in strange patterns, a stark contrast to the neutral tones of the café. Curiosity piqued within Sarah as she made her way to the counter. She couldn't help but sneak glances at the man. He seemed lost in thought, occasionally lifting his cup, but his expression was serious and out of place for such a lively setting. Something about him drew her in, a pull she couldn't resist, and she felt a playful urge to approach. "Nice hat," Sarah called out with a cheeky smile, half sarcastic, half genuine. The hat looked like it belonged at a carnival, not a quaint cafe. The man looked up, surprise flashing across his face for a moment before he smirked. He pulled the hat lower, shielding his eyes, but Sarah could see a hint of amusement beneath his serious exterior. "Thanks," he replied, a twinkle of mischief in his eyes. She laughed lightly. Well, mission accomplished. The banter flowed effortlessly and she felt a warm connection growing. But as she turned to grab her drink, she noticed a couple of the cafe staff whispering in hushed tones, glancing back at the man. Curiosity twisted in her stomach. Why were they whispering? Did they know something she didn't? Sarah couldn't shake the feeling. Even with her drink in hand, her eyes kept drifting back to him. It was as if she could sense that his presence held a mystery, one that clung to the air around them. She asked, trying to keep the conversation alive and shake off her unease. He nodded slowly, his manner now more cautious, just passing through. His voice held a depth that intrigued her. As they chatted about the small town, Sarah felt warmth bubbling between them. She learned his name was Jake and he had traveled far and wide. With every word, she felt herself drawn deeper into his world. Meanwhile, her mind kept circling back to the staff. They whispered more frequently, occasional glances shot in their direction. Sarah asked, a glimmer of boldness in her voice. This man with his quirky hat and easy smile had a tale lurking beneath the surface. Jake hesitated, the lightness in his expression dimmed for just a brief second. His eyes darted toward the staff, who seemed to be more engrossed in their chatter now. "Mine is too," Sarah said, trying to lighten the mood, feeling that familiar connection slipping slightly away. "I spend my days in this cafe daydreaming and writing," he chuckled softly. "We all have our dreams, right?" Just then, Sarah could no longer ignore the tension in the room. One of the staff members, a young woman with bright red hair, stepped closer to their table, her expression tight. She said, her tone dipping into something almost formal. He turned, his relaxed demeanor vanishing. Her voice was low, and Sarah watched as Jake stiffened slightly, the ghost of worry flitting across his features. "Sure," he said, but his voice lacked its usual buoyancy. He pushed his chair back and followed her to a secluded corner of the cafe. Sarah couldn't catch every word, but the unease in the air told her something important was happening. A sudden wave of apprehension washed over her. What was going on? Was he in trouble? As she sipped her drink, her mind whirled with the possibilities. Her heart raced at the thought, was he a criminal, an undercover agent, a celebrity hiding from the world? She tensed, feeling both intrigued and uneasy. Just then, another staff member whispered to her over the counter. "Did you know that's Jake Reynolds?" His voice was rife with a mix of excitement and disbelief. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. Of course, she remembered now. The art shows, the interviews, even his wild hat now a symbol of his brand. She felt a rush of embarrassment wash over her. Here she was, teasing him about the very thing that made him famous. The playful banter suddenly felt less innocent. Jake returned, his expression a mixture of frustration and fatigue. "Sorry about that," he said, sliding back into his chair. His smile was faint, but the spark was gone. She asked gently, wanting to ease the tension. "Just manager stuff," he replied, the weight of his words heavier than they should have been. She nodded, her heart racing with new thoughts. The words slipped out before she could stop them. The vulnerability in Jake's eyes caught her off guard, as if he was weighing every word now. "Fame can be a double-edged sword," he admitted, leaning back as if trying to escape his own thoughts. Sarah understood that feeling all too well. She wrestled with her own dreams, always searching for validation while fearing judgment. "Sometimes I feel like I'm just the girl who serves coffee." Jake looked at her, his eyes searching hers, and she felt an unexpected bond forming. "Maybe we both just need to be brave in our own ways," he said softly. His words resonated deeply, igniting a flicker of something profound between them. As the cafe buzzed around them, the connection felt so strong that time seemed to stand still. It was an understanding that went beyond labels. Just then the staff returned, their whispers fading as they resumed their tasks, but the energy in the cafe shifted, like a storm passing through. Sarah noticed the glances again, but this time they felt heavier. Jake kept his gaze averted, as if he was trying to disappear into the wall behind him. She suggested. It was an impulsive idea, but she craved to know more about him, away from prying eyes. He considered her for a moment, then nodded with a small smile. They stood up together, and she felt a rush of excitement mixed with anxiety as they stepped outside, the warm sun casting a golden hue around them. The conversation flowed as they walked down Maplewood's tree-lined streets, the light-hearted banter returning with a natural ease. Sarah felt carefree, forgetting the weight of the cafe, the whispers, even Jake's identity as an artist. They talked about life, love, and the dreams that lingered in the corners of their hearts. But just as Sarah was beginning to lose herself in the moment, a sudden commotion interrupted them. A group of fans spotted Jake from a distance, their excitement spilling into loud shouts. "It's him," they cried, sprinting toward them. Panic flickered in Jake's eyes, a look of dread washing over his face. Sarah's heart dropped. She could see the lost boy behind the confident artist. She understood too well the weight of expectation that suddenly crashed down around him. "Run," he said urgently, grabbing her hand. Before she could process it, they were sprinting. Sarah's heart raced alongside her feet, adrenaline coursing through her as they dashed down side streets, turning corners and weaving through alleyways. The cheers of the fans grew fainter, but the thrill of the chase filled her with a mix of fear and exhilaration. Finally, they ducked behind a tall fence, gasping for breath. Jake leaned against the wall, his expression a whirlwind of emotions. A mix of fear and relief washed over both of them, and for a moment they just stared at each other, hearts racing. "Thanks for saving me," Jake said, a nervous laugh escaping his lips. "It's the most exciting thing that's happened to me in a while," Sarah admitted, her cheeks flushed. His face fell slightly, the weight of his reality crashing down. "It's not all glitter and sparkles. People expect you to be perfect to fit this image." Sarah swallowed hard, her heart aching for him. "You don't have to be perfect." He looked at her, something shifting in his gaze. "Of course," she said, her voice steady. "You're more than just a face or a name." They stayed quiet for a moment, the tension transforming into something softer, more profound. He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I think so," she replied, a soft smile crossing her lips. As they leaned in closer, something shifted between them, a promise of understanding that transcended the chaos outside. In that moment, behind the tall fence, beneath the sunlit sky, they were no longer bound by expectations. They merely were two souls sharing a fragile yet daring connection. For Sarah, it felt as if they had ventured into a new world where their real selves could flourish, free from the weight of the hat and the whispers of those around them. Together, they could redefine what it meant to chase a dream, to embrace authenticity within a colorful swirl of life's unpredictable moments. The moment Sarah stepped into the bustling cafe, she felt the warmth of camaraderie wash over her, a soundscape of laughter, clinking cups, and the rich aroma of coffee brewing. But it was the man in the corner, wearing a hat that could only be described as wildly outlandish, who truly captured her attention. The hat was an oversized masterpiece of color, and as she walked closer, her curiosity grew. What story could possibly lie behind such a bold accessory? Sarah couldn't help glancing back at him as she ordered her usual, a vanilla latte topped with just the right amount of foam. She wondered what kind of character he was. He sat alone, his focus locked on a sketch pad, pencil dancing across the page. As she waited at the counter, she leaned into her playful side and decided to break the ice. She called out, her tone teasing as she pointed at his hat. "What's the deal with that thing?" She grinned, half expecting him to be taken aback. He glanced up, surprise punctuating his features before a smile broke through. "It's called standing out," he shot back, his voice easy and relaxed. A spark ignited in Sarah's chest. "Is that so?" Their playful exchange drew the attention of a young waitress nearby. She leaned over, whispering to her coworker while shooting glances at the man. Sarah picked up snippets of their conversation, famous artist, viral sketch, phrases that prickled her curiosity and wrapped her in a cocoon of intrigue. She asked, unable to shake the feeling that there was more to him than met the eye. "Jake," he replied, his smile growing wider. Even as he spoke, she noticed a flicker of something darker dart across his eyes. Was it caution? The laughter around them dulled slightly, and she felt the weight of the moment shift. "I'm Sarah," she said, trying to maintain the lightness while her mind raced with questions. What kind of artist was he? Why was he here alone? Not wanting to pry, she let the conversation flow, asking about his artwork. Jake shared stories of streets adorned with murals and canvases that told tales of love, loss, and life. Just when Sarah started to lose herself in his words, she caught the waitress's gaze again. This time it was marked by an undeniable urgency. "Excuse me for a moment," she said, disengaging from Jake's spell. Stepping aside, she couldn't help but strain to hear their conversation. Their whispers were muffled, obscured by the ambient noise of the cafe, but the way they looked at Jake was enough to send a wave of unease through her. When she returned to Jake's table, he was driving a hush over his thoughts, the sparkiness in his demeanor dulled once more. He asked, his expression keen and alert as if he had sensed something shift in the air. "Just a bit of gossip," she said lightly, hoping to brush it off, but uncertainty clung to her words, peeling them back layer by layer. Jake hesitated, eyes darting toward the staff again. "I'm a little tired of the chatter, to be honest." His voice dropped to a whisper, and for the first time she saw vulnerability flicker in his eyes. The bold hat he wore suddenly seemed like a shield, a way to hide from the world outside. Sarah blurted, feeling the urge to help interpret this complex man before her. She didn't know what compelled her to invite him, but she knew this interaction was different. It wasn't just coffee and small talk. The air thickened with unsaid words, the promise of a deeper connection, and the chance to break free from the cafe's tight grasp. Jake scanned the room before nodding, and they slipped out together, leaving behind the swirling chaos and whispers echoing within the cafe. The moment they stepped onto the sun-drenched sidewalk, a wave of energy surged between them, one filled with the thrill of adventure and uncertainty. As they wandered the streets, the conversation started to flow like the warm breeze around them. Jake spoke freely about his art, about how every stroke of his pencil was a conversation with the world, wild, free, and sometimes chaotic. Sarah found herself entranced by his storytelling, her laughter mingling with his thoughts, an electric current that only intensified their connection. Yet just as they began to sink deep into the comfort of each other's company, a group of young people rounded the corner, their faces lit up with a mix of excitement and disbelief. Jake Reynolds. One of the girls squealed, pointing and rushing forward. The sudden shift in energy was palpable, turning their serene stroll into a maelstrom of chaos. Jake shouted, his earlier relaxation evaporating like a mirage in the desert. He grabbed her wrist, and they pushed through the crowd that had materialized from nowhere, shouts and cheers following them like shadows. In moments they were dashing through the streets, weaving in and out of alleyways as a mix of adulation and disbelief filled the air behind them. Sarah's heart raced, not just from the exertion but from the sheer thrill of being part of something chaotic and real. Freedom surged through her veins. This was not a stroll anymore. It was adventure in its purest form. Finally, they ducked into a quiet, shaded corner. Breathless, Sarah pressed her back against the cool brick wall, trying to catch her breath while Jake leaned against it, marveling at the absurdity of it all. Sarah laughed, feeling the rush of adrenaline pulsing through her. Jake shook his head, attempting to stifle a grin. "It's more like running away from my life," he admitted, his voice dipped in seriousness once again. She felt her heart sink as the weight of his words settled in. She asked, a grave concern lacing her tone. He sighed deeply, looking around as if searching for a way back to normalcy. Fame isn't what it's cracked up to be. They see the art, the name, the hat, but they don't see the person behind it. Sarah's disappointment swelled, realizing this playful exchange had layers of complexity beneath its surface. His vulnerability painted a different picture from what she had imagined, breaking the persona he wore with the eccentric hat he flaunted. "Then let's create our own normal for now," she suggested, surprising herself with the conviction in her voice. "Let's have an adventure without the spotlight." His eyes, a brilliant mix of surprise and something warmer, met hers. "Absolutely," she responded, feeling an electric charge of something they both needed: freedom and authenticity. Together, they stepped back into the sunlight, leaving behind the buzz of admiration. As they roamed the streets, they exchanged stories and dreams, whimsical tales of what could be, and reflections on the truths they held close. Sarah shared snippets about her life as a barista and an aspiring writer, and Jake poured out details of creative visions he was terrified to release to the world. They drifted from one adventure to another. They danced past street performers, sharing laughs over impromptu music, and Sarah even convinced Jake to try a ridiculous dance to keep the energy high, pulling them both into moments of lightheartedness amidst the heaviness that often hovered around him. But even in their joyous adventure, shadows loomed nearby. As they traversed through the park, it became evident that whispers were not far behind. They could still hear snippets of conversation. "Did you see?" Each whisper dug deeper into Jake's skin, and she could see the unease grow beneath the surface. He asked suddenly, his voice barely above a whisper. They found a quiet bench beneath an oak tree, the shade wrapping around them like a comforting blanket. "I'm sorry. It's okay," she replied, wanting him to know she was still there, still present. "You can talk to me." Jake took a deep breath, his fingers absently tracing patterns in the wood of the bench. "I just want to be seen as more than a name." He looked at her, vulnerability etched across his face. "With you, I feel like I'm just Jake, not the artist, not the guy everyone gapes at. It feels..." A flicker of recognition crossed Sarah's mind, a deeper understanding of the man before her. "I want to see you too, not just the hat or the fame." The honesty in her words hung in the air, ripe with unspoken promise. For the first time, the tension between them melted into something more intimate. They shared a moment of eye contact that felt like an anchor, like they were carving out space just for each other amid the noise of the world. "I think I can do that," he murmured, his voice low, almost a whisper. Sarah smiled, feeling like they had crossed an invisible line together. Just Jake then. For the first time since they had met, Jake chuckled, and the sound was genuine. It warmed her heart. As they sat there beneath the oak tree, the whispers surrounding them faded. In that perfect bubble of connection, they created their own world, a safe zone where they defined their conversation and their journeys. Time drifted by, hours slipping through their fingers like grains of sand, but each moment felt rich and fulfilling. They talked about their family, their dreams, and even fears that lay hidden in the corners of their minds. No longer did Sarah think about the irony of teasing him about a hat that held deeper meaning. Instead, she began to ponder her own complexities, reflecting on her aspirations while feeling seen for the first time in her life. As they shared their worlds, each laugh unfurled new colors, painting a vivid tapestry that held them both captive. The bustling cafe, the chaos, the fame, they all felt distant, eclipsed by the tangible connection forming between them. When it was finally time to return, their hands brushed together, fingers instinctively intertwining. Jake glanced at her, vulnerability still etched in his expression, a contrast to the bravado he usually wore like armor. "No, thank you," Sarah said, the honesty wrapping around them like a cherished secret. As they stepped back into the cafe, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they had shared something rare, a brief escape into truth. The world may have returned to normal, but within that moment, cloaked in the comfort of vulnerability, they wove the beginnings of a bond that felt destined to grow. And she wondered if he felt the same, if the desire to shed the expectations was something they could explore together. In a sea of uncertainty, they had found a piece of themselves quietly shining in the chaos, a masterpiece hidden in plain sight. The whispers echoed around them, but together they had created a melody that was uniquely their own. The moment Sarah stepped into the cozy coffee shop, her eyes immediately zeroed in on a figure sitting at one of the small tables in the corner. He was a man dressed in a casual shirt, but it was the huge, flamboyant hat atop his head that drew the most attention. Bright colors swirled in patterns that seemed to dance with life. It was bold and completely out of place in the otherwise muted cafe. As she approached the counter to order her usual, an extra-large vanilla latte, her curiosity about the man only deepened. The way the hat sat on his head, slightly askew, told her he wore it not just as an accessory, but perhaps as a shield. She found herself wondering what stories lay hidden behind that quirky hat, what life adventures had led him to this small cafe. Sarah called out, her voice dripping with playful sarcasm. The man looked up, a flicker of surprise flitting across his face before a grin broke through. His reply was swift, charming, and unexpected. Sarah couldn't help but laugh, feeling a spark of connection. Just then, as they exchanged banter, Sarah noticed the cafe staff huddled together near the counter, whispering in hushed tones. Glances darted toward the man, and Sarah caught snippets of their conversation. The words "famous artist" and "viral" floated through the air like incense smoke, wrapping around her mind. Confusion settled in. Was this guy a celebrity? Unable to shed her curiosity, she turned back to him. "So what's your real story?" The man chuckled, a flash of discomfort flickering in his eyes. He looked away for a moment as if grappling with something unspoken. "Sarah," she replied, extending her hand. The connection felt electric, yet she could sense something deeper hidden beneath his lighthearted facade. Jake glanced back at the baristas, who squirmed under the weight of their own whispers, and then returned his gaze to Sarah. "It's complicated being me." An unsettling feeling settled in Sarah's stomach. Suddenly, the quirkiest hat in the cafe felt like armor rather than a joke. The laughter faded into an uncertain tension, and in that moment she realized she had a chance to peel back the layers of the man before her. She suggested, spontaneity bubbling in her chest. Jake hesitated for a moment, his brow furrowing as he glanced back at the staff, but Sarah could see the battle within him. Sure, as they exited the cafe, she could hear a faint combination of astonished gasps and hushed speculation from the staff. Sarah caught snippets of their awe-filled voices. Once outside, the bustling sounds of the city washed over them. Good-natured chaos, cars honking, kids laughing, and the buzzing of conversations filled the air, composing a symphony of normalcy. It felt liberating. The weight of expectation melted as they began to stroll, casual at first but thickening with every step into something more profound. Sarah asked playfully, nudging him with her shoulder. "Why the big hat?" Jake hesitated, his fingers brushing against the brim of his hat. "It's a little bit of both, I suppose." His words resonated deeply within Sarah. She nodded, thinking about all the times she felt lost in the grind of everyday life. "I get that, exactly," he replied, a glint of understanding in his eyes. As they continued to walk, the conversation flowed naturally. Sarah opened up about her life as a barista and her dreams of becoming a writer. In turn, Jake shared snippets of his art career and how he struggled against the current of expectations that came with it. But just as the chemistry between them began to blossom, something in Jake shifted, a storm brewing behind those bright eyes. She noticed him looking over his shoulder increasingly, moments of tension pulling his brows together. She asked, concern creasing her forehead, "This is not how I usually interact with people. I feel like I'm being watched," he replied, glancing at a group approaching them. There was a herd of fans now, their faces glowing as they recognized him from a distance. They shouted, thick with excitement. Panic shot through Jake's face, and before she knew it, he had grabbed her hand. He exclaimed, leading her away from the swarm. They ducked into a narrow alley, pressing themselves against the cool stone walls while the crowd swarmed past, oblivious to their escape. Sarah's heart raced wildly, adrenaline surging through her veins. The thrill, she laughed, breathless. "Insane doesn't even begin to cover it," Jake replied, half smirking despite his panic. "It's just..." Sarah urged, feeling a rush of freedom. They darted through the labyrinth of alleyways, laughter mingling with the echoes of their footsteps. This was no ordinary day, and she was thrilled to be a part of it. Finally, they stopped, leaning against another wall to catch their breath. The clamor of the chasing crowd faded into the background. Sarah glanced at Jake, noticing the raw intensity in his expression. The bravado he'd shown was starting to crack under the surface. "I'm sorry," he said softly, staring down the alley. "It's not a mess," Sarah countered, her voice firm yet gentle. "This might just be the most exciting thing that's happened to me in a long time. You're just, or running from it," he mused, the weight of his words setting in. "You have no idea how hard it is to balance who I am with what people expect of me. Sometimes I feel like this hat symbolizes the weight of those expectations." Her heart ached for him. She too shared that feeling of being defined by others' perceptions. She asked quietly, wanting to peel back the layers. "I don't know if I've ever been able to answer that," he admitted, rubbing the back of his neck and looking lost in thought. The truth hung heavy in the air. They stood there, connected by the shared weight of expectation and longing, a moment suspended in time. "Let's find it together," Sarah suggested, her voice unwavering. "Even just for today, let's be us, no expectations, no pressures." Jake lifted his gaze to meet hers, a smile slowly breaking through his somber exterior. "Absolutely," she said, feeling the warmth swell in her chest. With that, they stepped out from the shadows of the alley, re-entering the sunlight. The street was a canvas blank and waiting for their colors. Wherever they went from here, it felt like the world opened up around them, an opportunity for new beginnings. As they strolled through the park, Sarah felt light, buoyed by the spontaneity and the raw honesty between them. They shared stories about their childhood dreams, their struggles with adulthood, and laughs over silly moments that shaped their personalities. Time seemed to slip away, lost in the sanctity of their shared space. They walked, leaning against the backdrop of life bustling around them, living in the moment. "I think I'll keep wearing this hat," Jake declared suddenly, his rigorous expression transforming into something more playful. "It's outrageous and it makes people talk, which is exactly what I want." Sarah cheered, nudging him playfully. "Besides, you look good in it." A wave of excitement washed over her as she thought about how, with each moment spent together, they found more of themselves, pieces that had been lost amidst the world's noise. But as the day opened up before them, shadows of uncertainty began to seep back in. Jake's laughter tinged with uncertainty. "What if I want to have more days like this? What if I want to be real?" "Of course you can," Sarah answered, an earnest conviction anchoring her words. "Being real doesn't mean you have to hide." Jake considered her words, the internal struggle visible in his expression. "And what if they just want the hat?" "Then they're not seeing you. You decide who gets to see the real you." He nodded, yet a flicker of doubt still lingered behind his eyes. "What if I mess up? Every single person on this planet is a work in progress," she said, her voice gravelly with sincerity. "We all mess up, and every moment of vulnerability is a step towards authenticity." Guess what? As they walked, the warmth of their connection grew, inspiring a hint of confidence in Jake. "I think I needed to hear that," he admitted, his voice softer with understanding. "Then consider it a gift. You're a brilliant artist who wears a loud hat." All around them, life continued to whirl, but in this moment they carved out a pocket of safety. Jake shifted, his expression transformed into one of hope. "I want to break out. Maybe I'll keep the hat and not worry about the whispers." As they walked hand in hand into the golden sunset, the city transformed into a backdrop of dreams and aspirations. Their laughter rang out, echoing into the evening air, a reminder that even amid chaos, connections could spark moments of real significance. In the end, both Jake and Sarah found a slice of freedom and authenticity within each other, hidden beneath the surface, all beginning with a playful tease about a hat. And perhaps, just perhaps, they had begun to unravel the mystery of themselves, two souls navigating life together, unafraid to tease, to stumble, and to grow. Together they painted their own canvas, a masterpiece of authenticity waiting to be unveiled. It was a bustling afternoon in the heart of downtown, and the little café was packed. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingled with sweet pastries in the air, creating an inviting atmosphere. Sarah entered with the familiar sound of the bell tinkling overhead, momentarily lost in her thoughts about the day ahead. But as her eyes scanned the room, they landed on a man sitting alone at a small table in the corner. He wore a large hat, no, not just large. It was a flamboyant explosion of colors that seemed almost to defy gravity. Bright reds, yellows, and blues splashed across the fabric in a way that was both captivating and bewildering. What was he thinking? Did he truly believe that wearing such a hat would go unnoticed in a place like this? Sarah couldn't help herself. With a mischievous glint in her eyes, she approached him. She called out, a playful smirk forming on her lips. The man looked up, momentarily surprised, and then a grin spread across his face. His voice held a warmth that made her feel instantly at ease. "Only if I get to wear a more sensible outfit," she shot back, laughter dancing in her tone. As their banter flowed, she felt an undeniable connection stirring between them, an electric chemistry that was rare and thrilling. But as she leaned in closer, Sarah noticed the cafe staff whispering among themselves, their glances darting towards him. There was a strange urgency in their hushed voices, a spark of recognition mixed with awe. She couldn't quite catch what they were saying, but it felt tinged with an electricity that sent a chill down her spine. She asked, her curiosity piqued, wanting nothing more than to pull him out from whatever shadow loomed over him. "Jake," he replied, his eyes flickering with something unspoken. "Sarah," she said, feeling the gravity of the moment. With a chuckle, he leaned back in his chair, yet Sarah felt a flicker of discomfort ripple through the atmosphere. The baristas kept murmuring, casting glances at Jake like he was a coveted secret about to be revealed. She asked, trying to dismiss the growing tension. Jake hesitated, his smile faltering. Let's just say, the weight of his words hung between them. Sarah searched his eyes for answers, but all she found was a hint of anxiety. Just then, Jake's gaze shifted back to the staff and he frowned. She could almost see the walls he had built around himself begin to rise again. She blurted, recognizing the discomfort tightening his shoulders. They had exchanged a cool banter, but she suddenly sensed his struggle beneath the playful facade. "We could go somewhere less, yeah," he said slowly, his lips pressing into a thin line as if weighing the pros and cons. They paid for their drinks and stepped out into the bustling streets where the sun bathed everything in a warm glow. The chaos of the cafe faded behind them. Outside, a different world unfolded, a canvas of life in all its shades, bustling with people, food trucks, and street performers. Sarah asked, curious about the man who wore a hat that could draw a crowd all on its own. Jake glanced around nervously, as if double-checking to ensure they wouldn't be overheard. "I do a lot of street art murals installations." He paused, searching for the right words. A flush of realization washed over Sarah. This wasn't just some whimsical artist. He was the artist, the one that had gone viral for daring street pieces that sparked conversations around the city. "I think I've seen your work on social media," she admitted. A hint of pride flickered in his eyes before he quickly masked it with a laugh. They continued walking, moving further away from the cafe and closer to a park. The chatter of the city began to blend into a soothing background hum. With every step, Sarah was more drawn to Jake's authenticity beneath the colorful exterior, but she could sense the strain of fame weighing on him. Sarah asked, her curiosity bubbling to the surface. "Every single day," he replied, his voice heavy. "People think they know you because they've seen your work, but it can be isolating, like I'm just this." There was an earnestness in his tone that tugged at her heart. Sarah considered that feeling of being trapped by the image others created for you. She too had dealt with her share of expectations, the pressure to always be on display. "I guess we all wear our own masks," she replied, her voice soft yet firm. Comfortable silence settled between them, the kind that felt like a door opening to deeper truths. With every step, Sarah felt the walls between them dissolve. As they approached the park, laughter and shouts of children playing filled the air. Jake's face brightened, the animated energy around them dulling the weight upon his shoulders. "This is my favorite type of chaos," he said, a genuine smile breaking through. "Mine too," Sarah admitted, feeling drawn into his passion. They settled on a bench overlooking a small pond, water shimmering under the sun like glass. Kids played nearby, their laughter echoing in the air. Sarah indulged in the moment, watching Jake's demeanor shift as he relaxed in this small pocket of spontaneity. He seemed more like the artist she had imagined, the playful, free spirit hiding under layers of expectation. She asked, trying to draw him back into conversation. "I did one a few streets over," he replied, warmth creeping into his voice. Sarah exclaimed, picturing the vibrant colors and words dancing across the wall. A twinkle sparked in Jake's eyes. "I would love to, but just a heads up, it's gotten a little." The shift in his mood was palpable. His comfort began to falter again, the growing recognition casting a shadow across his face. She asked, trying to navigate the tension gently. "It's complicated," he sighed. "Sometimes it's embraced, other times it's overwhelming. The truth is, artists are often expected to be larger than life. If you're not on, people are disappointed." Sarah's heart sank for him. What if you could be both? You can own the artist persona while also being Jake. He looked at her, deep in thought. "I never looked at it that way," he said slowly. "Maybe I can try." "Then show them who you are," Sarah challenged. "Be brave, wear the hat, paint the murals, and share the story of Jake with them." For a moment, hope flickered in his eyes, and it filled Sarah with an unexpected warmth. Maybe, just maybe, her words would spark something within him. Suddenly, a group of passers-by approached, their eyes widening with excitement. "Jake," one exclaimed, excitement bubbling over. Another added, practically bouncing on their feet. Jake turned to Sarah, uncertainty painted across his face. He whispered, anxiety creeping back in. She squeezed his hand gently. "You've got this." In that defining moment, he straightened, letting out a breath. He called out to the fans, his voice steady. It felt like a shift one Sarah could sense in her bones. Jake enveloped himself in the moment, standing tall as he posed with fans, the colorful hat towering above him, vibrant in the sunlight. Sarah watched, entranced, realizing she was witnessing a transformation, a man stepping out from behind the mural, declaring himself visible without losing authenticity. With every smile and every click of the camera, it felt like he was embracing both identities. Once the photo session ended, Jake returned to her side, the corners of his mouth still curled up in a shy smile. "Thanks for that, it felt good," he admitted, a shade of disbelief lingering in his voice. She cheered, pride swelling in her chest. "See, you can be you without losing your art." They laughed together, and as the sun began to dip toward the horizon, Sarah felt the shift in their dynamic two souls interweaving their identities, shedding expectations like old skin. "Okay, show me the mural," she said, her excitement bubbling over. With a mix of anticipation and trepidation, Jake led her through the streets, his hand brushing against hers. They arrived at the wall, and Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The mural was a magnificent burst of colors and shapes, a testament to connection, love, and resilience. Each stroke told a story, capturing the essence of community. "This is incredible," she gasped, taking in the vibrant expressions of life depicted before her. "Thank you," he replied, bashfully scratching the back of his head. There they stood, side by side before a masterpiece, two different worlds colliding but coming together through art and shared experience. As they walked away from the mural, Sarah felt a deep sense of connection. She could see that Jake was beginning to find the courage to embrace both facets of his identity. The artist and the man behind the hat were blending into a harmonious whole. "Then don't wait," she encouraged, her spirit soaring with the moment. "Be both." As they continued their adventure, the sun launched itself into the horizon, casting breathtaking hues across the sky-golden shades of new beginnings, blushes of vulnerability, and the darker blues of reality all intertwined. That evening marked the start of something important for both of them, a step away from masks and into authenticity. Banter about hats had cracked the surface, exposing unarticulated feelings and desires. Jake was learning the importance of embracing all parts of himself, and Sarah felt empowered to explore her own identity's elements that made her uniquely her. In their journey that day, they shared laughter, vulnerability, and truth as they danced through the streets together. The energy between them was electric, forging a connection that drew them closer. Two people no longer just defined by expectations began to weave their own stories together, and the adventure had only just begun. The bell above the cafe door jingled as Sarah entered, a small wave of warmth washing over her. It was a sanctuary from the dreary drizzle outside, and the rich scent of coffee was a comforting embrace. But as she scanned the room, her eyes were drawn to a man sitting alone at a corner table, wearing an enormous, flamboyant hat that seemed almost to defy gravity. The colors, brilliant reds, vivid blues, and startling yellows swirled together like an abstract painting. It was distracting, bold, and utterly captivating. Curiosity sparked within her. What kind of person wore a hat like that? Did he think it made him invisible, or was he just reveling in the attention? She approached the counter for her usual order, but found herself glancing back at him more than once. His focused gaze was locked on a sketch pad, pencil gliding across the page. He seemed lost in his own world, yet entirely present. Feeling a playful twinge of mischief, she decided to close the distance. She called, her tone teasing yet light. Jake looked up, momentarily startled, and then a grin broke across his face. His voice was warm, inviting, and something inside Sarah fluttered. "Only if I can wear a snazzy outfit," she shot back, a smile stretching across her face. They exchanged light-hearted banter, and for just a moment the cafe faded into a backdrop. She felt a spark of connection and exciting chemistry flaring between them. But then she noticed the staff huddled together near the counter. Their whispers cut through the moment, attention rising as they cast furtive glances in Jake's direction. Sarah heard one ask, her voice tinged with disbelief. Jake's expression shifted slightly, the carefree glint in his eye dimming. He seemed to sense the weight of their words, a tightness forming around his mouth. He asked gently, trying to steer the conversation back to lighter territory. Sarah challenged, a playful glimmer still present. He chuckled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Not quite. Sarah picked up on his discomfort. She had gotten her usual rush from the banter, but felt an inkling of something deeper, attention he couldn't hide. "Well, it's a little too crowded in here," she offered. His gaze flicked back to the staff, almost as if weighing an invisible scale, but then a hint of relief washed over him. Sure, they stepped outside, the damp air greeting them like a familiar friend. The vibrant chaos of the city surrounded them, cars honking and people bustling by. Her heart raced a little as they walked side by side, and she felt truly alive. She asked, wanting to draw him out of his shell. Jake ran a hand through his hair, glancing around as if checking for eavesdroppers. "I do street art murals, installations, pieces that speak to people," he said, his tone growing heavier. Sarah gestured to his hat. A flicker of something crossed his face. Was it vulnerability? "Something like that," he murmured, "but it's not what I always want." She laughed lightly. "Who wants to be normal, but I guess I get it." As they walked, they began to share snippets of their lives, stories of ambition, flaws, hopes, and fears. Trekking through the streets, they both felt a weight lift, like shedding worn-out clothes. Jake shared his journey as an artist, the thrill of creating something from nothing, but there was also a shadow that crossed his words. "It's a double-edged sword. The attention can be overwhelming," he admitted, his gaze flicking to a group of people ahead who were looking in their direction. Sarah asked, her heart aching for him. All at once, Jake's expression shifted. "You have to understand." I've spent years building my brand, using this outrageous hat to stand out. She could sense the struggle, the internal tug-of-war between the artist and the man seeking reprieve. I can imagine, she said softly. People are quick to define you by what they see. It's exhausting sometimes, isn't it? He turned to her, surprise etched across his features. Absolutely, she replied, the conviction in her voice strong. After a moment, Jake offered a shy smile, and there it was, a moment of solidarity that drew them closer. Together, they ventured deeper into the streets, exploring, laughing, and allowing the barriers built by the world around them to drop, even if just for a while. As they meandered, Sarah spotted a small park in the distance, its greenery contrasting against the urban backdrop. She asked, gesturing toward the inviting space. Perfect idea, he agreed, and they walked over, the grass springy and welcoming underfoot. They found a quiet spot beneath a large tree where the chatter of children playing filled the void. Settled in, Sarah turned to Jake. Show me your art sometime. For the first time, an infectious enthusiasm lit up his face. You'd really like to see it. I want to see the real stuff, she replied sincerely. The work that comes from your heart. Jake's smile deepened. I can show you some of my favorites, my passion projects. Just then, a commotion broke their moment of tranquility. A group of teenagers recognized Jake from across the park and rushed over, excitement lighting up their faces. They're almost palpable. Jake, one of them shouted, clearly thrilled. Caught off guard, Jake glanced at her, uncertainty washing over his features. See, this is the thing. Embrace it, she whispered, squeezing his hand. With that, he straightened and turned to face the excited crowd. Sure, he said, his voice confident despite the flutter of nerves. Sarah watched as Jake engaged with the teenagers, his smile brightening. He posed for pictures, laughter bubbling up as they showered him with compliments. And in that moment, he wasn't just the artist, he was simply Jake. When it was all over, he returned to her side, a look of disbelief playing on his face. That was, she said, grinning, you did great. It's possible to be both the artist and the man beneath the hat. Jake nodded slowly, digesting her words. Exactly, Sarah encouraged. Embrace the chaos. Life has a way of keeping us on our toes. They lingered for a while longer, sharing stories and finding solace in the strength of friendship forming between them. With each shared laugh and nod of understanding, they began to lay the framework for deeper layers of connection. As the sun dipped behind the horizon, casting a warm golden hue across the sky, Sarah turned to Jake. You know, you're pretty remarkable even outside of all this, she said, motioning to the quickly darkening scenery. Jake's expression softened. Because you're not a spectacle, Jake, you're a person, she replied, her voice steady. He shifted, the weight of her words settling over him. I often forget that I don't have to carry the pressure of being someone all the time, he confessed quietly. As darkness enveloped the park, they both realized that for the first time in a long time, Jake felt some of the pressure lift away. Feeling emboldened, Sarah took a deep breath. Sure, he replied, curious but a bit apprehensive. Jake smiled softly, tilting his head slightly. It's a conversation piece, it draws attention and sparks curiosity. But sometimes I wear it as armor, a way to shield myself from expectations. When I put it on, I feel like I'm wearing a character. She asked gently. His eyes met hers, a mixture of contemplation and fear flickering in his gaze. Maybe I have, but it's complicated. What if, Sarah suggested, you took the hat off in some spaces and showed people your real self, not just the flamboyant artist? Let them get to know Jake, the man behind the canvas. It hung in the air like a challenge, one that cracked open the possibility of change. Jake considered her words, his heart thumping as he felt the weight of transformation. Maybe that's what I need to do, he admitted slowly, nodding to himself. It's worth thinking about. As they sat there, enveloped by the sounds of the city settling down for the night, they knew they were on the cusp of something extraordinary. Laughter, the fears, and the colorful stories made a mosaic of reality, one that didn't just revolve around Jake and his hat, but embraced the complexities of truth in every form. As they stood up to leave, Sarah felt closer to Jake than ever. Each step, each shared moment formed a bond that felt both fragile and fiercely beautiful. Thanks for today, Sarah, Jake said as they made their way back to the street, the moonlight guiding their footsteps. No, she replied, genuine warmth flowing through her voice. Thank you for sharing yourself with me. With that, they stepped back into the bustling streets where the chaos held promise. The world may have continued to whirl around them, but amidst the noise, they had found clarity, a kaleidoscope of friendship, authenticity, and hope. As they walked side by side, their heartbeats harmonized with the vibrant city rhythm, ready to embrace whatever came next together. The bell above the cafe door chimed softly as Sarah stepped inside, shaking off the chill of the autumn air. She inhaled deeply, savoring the rich scent of freshly brewed coffee and baked pastries. The cafe was bustling, filled with familiar faces and the comforting noise of conversations blending into one another. But it was a figure in the corner that captured her attention immediately. He was wearing a hat so large and colorful it looked almost cartoonish. Bright reds and blues swirled together in a chaotic pattern that demanded attention. She couldn't help but wonder who he was under that hat. Did he wear it to stand out, or was it a mask hiding something deeper? Her curiosity propelled her toward the man, a playful urge bubbling inside her. she called out, humor threading through her voice. He looked up, momentarily startled, but then a smile broke across his face. His voice was warm and inviting, full of a charm that piqued her interest. "Only if it comes with a snazzy outfit," she shot back, laughter in her eyes. The banter felt effortless, a spark igniting in the air between them. But just then Sarah noticed the cafe staff whispering among themselves, their glances darting toward the man like curious birds. The atmosphere shifted slightly, tension coiling in the air. The ease that had blossomed moments ago cracked, revealing a glimpse of something more complex hidden beneath the surface. She asked, curiosity driving her forward. "Jake," he said, his expression now layered with something deep and unnameable. "Sarah, but people usually call me the Hat Teased," she chuckled lightly, trying to dissipate the sudden heaviness. As laughter bubbled between them again, Jake's gaze flicked back to the barista's, unease flickering across his features. "You know, the hat isn't just for show," he admitted, his tone shifting. A pang of empathy struck Sarah. She asked gently, feeling the moment turn serious. "From attention," he replied, glancing down, almost ashamed. "It's complicated being me." She searched his face, trying to understand the weight of his words. She teased lightly, trying to keep the moment from stifling under the weight of his admission. "No, not scared, just cautious," he said, forcing a smile. But his eyes betrayed him, anxiety flickered beneath the surface. Feeling the urge to help him regain some comfort, she suggested, "How about we get out of this crowded cafe?" Jake looked taken aback for a moment, almost relieved. "Yeah, that could work," he replied, visibly loosening up. They stepped outside into the cool autumn air where the sun still held sway over the streets. The brisk wind tousled their hair and Sarah felt an invigorating rush. As they walked along, side by side, she felt a sense of adventure stirring within her. He asked, wanting him to open up. Jake hesitated, glancing around as if to check for prying eyes. "Street art mostly," he replied, his tone still tinged with hesitance. "Murals, installations," she teased, her tone light yet curious. "Not all of us," he said, looking away momentarily. "Fame can feel like a cage." A beat of silence passed between them and Sarah realized how little they actually knew about each other, yet how connected they suddenly felt. "But your art has depth," she urged. He glanced back at her, looking thoughtful. "You really think that? I think you have the chance to show them who you are beneath that spectacle," she offered, her voice steady. A flicker of hope danced in Jake's eyes, and for a moment they stood together at the crossroads of vulnerability and possibility. "Maybe you're right," he confessed. As they wandered deeper into the city, laughter and conversation flowed easily. Together they shared snippets of their lives, laughing over awkward moments and dreaming about future adventures. The weight of expectations began to lift, and as they crossed through a small park, Sarah could see Jake ease into his true self. "This is actually a great place," she said, glancing around. He nodded, eyes wide as he took it all in. "Yes, I could spend hours here." As they found a bench, the sound of children playing filled the air. Jake's eyes lit up. His voice grew more animated. Sarah urged, excitement bubbling within her. As they walked toward the alley, she could feel the anticipation building. This would be a tangible piece of him, an insight into Jake's world. Arriving at the mural, her breath caught in her throat. It was a stunning explosion of color, a massive celebration of community, love, and resilience. Each stroke communicated emotions, stories woven together in vibrant hues. She exclaimed, moving closer to examine the details. "Thanks," he said, a shy smile creeping in. Sarah's heart swelled with admiration. "You absolutely did." As she admired the artistry, she could see a flicker of pride in Jake's eyes, a brightness she hadn't seen before. "I wish people could see me through this lens too," he said quietly. "Maybe they can if you let them," Sarah suggested gently. The question hung in the air, and she could see him genuinely considering it. Just then, a group of teenagers approached, their eyes locking onto Jake in excitement. One enthusiastic voice yelled out. Jake looked at Sarah, a hint of panic in his expression. "See what I mean?" she encouraged, squeezing his arm. After a moment's hesitation, he took a deep breath and turned to the teens. "Sure." As he posed with them, she watched a transformation, a glimpse of confidence replacing anxiety. Once the excitement subsided, Jake came back to her side, disbelief etched across his features. Sarah cheered, genuinely proud. "See how easy it can be." Jake looked contemplative for a moment, and she could see something shift within him. "You know, I've spent so long trying to balance being an artist and just being me." "Everyone has layers, it's who we are," she replied, her heart racing at their connection. With newfound energy, they wandered through more parts of the neighborhood, Jake shedding bits of anxiety as they continued to laugh and share stories. The sun began to dip lower in the sky, painting a warm orange hue over the city. Jake paused for a moment, staring intently at the sunset. "You know, I think I need to be brave about this, about being real with people." She agreed, her heart swelling with pride for him. "Thanks, Sarah. I feel like I've been wandering without a map for so long," he admitted, vulnerability spilling over in his tone. "Sometimes we just need a little nudge in the right direction," she replied. As they stood together, watching the last remnants of sunlight fade into twilight, a sense of hope wrapped around them like a comforting blanket. They had shared something special, a moment that transcended words and expectation. "Thank you for showing me that," Jake said softly. "Thank you for being you," Sarah smiled, feeling a warmth bloom within her chest. Eventually, as darkness cocooned the streets, they made their way back to the cafe, the buzz of city life still vibrant and alive. As they entered, the familiar jingle of the doorbell greeted them, but this time it felt different. Sarah noticed conversations around them, the way people engaged effortlessly. The energy in the cafe had transformed, and she felt a rush of possibility. Jake stood beside her, a hint of confidence replacing previous hesitation. "You know, I think I will wear this hat again," he said with a grin. "I think people will see you differently now," Sarah replied, a smile traded between them, one of understanding and connection. As they settled back into the familiar setting, the world around them seemed to fade. They had found each other that day, a meeting of kindred spirits, two people navigating the complexities of life, art, and identity. The night swayed with laughter and chatter, and as Sarah and Jake shared another latte, a sense of freedom filled the air between them. No longer just the artist in a hat or the girl teasing him about it, now they were two souls making space for authenticity. With the cafe alive around them, they began to dream about the adventures still to come, the layers yet to peel back, and the stories still waiting to be told. In that moment, they knew they were ready to embrace whatever awaited them together. The moment Sarah stepped into the cafe, her senses were instantly assaulted by a medley of warmth and aroma. Freshly ground coffee mingled with the buttery scent of croissants. It was a haven from the chilly autumn air outside, yet her gaze quickly darted to the corner of the room. A man sat there, his head adorned with an outrageously large hat, bright colors, dancing in an audacious swirl that almost seemed to vibrate with energy. She blurted to herself, a mix of amusement and curiosity taking root within her. The hat was so striking it demanded attention, making the man's face somewhat secondary. Intrigued, Sarah made her way to the counter, ordering her usual, the warm familiarity comforting her nerves. But even as she waited for her latte, her eyes kept returning to the man in the special hat. He was scribbling fervently in a sketchpad, his brow furrowed in concentration. Taking a bold step, Sarah chose to bridge the gap between them, a playful smirk forming on her lips. "Hey," she called out, her voice lifted above the cafe chatter. He looked up, surprise flickering across his face before a hint of laughter danced in his eyes. The banter flowed naturally between them, an effortless exchange that made the cafe fade into the backdrop. But as she leaned in closer, Sarah noticed the cafe staff whispering in hushed tones, casting discreet glances toward their table. A tight knot of tension tightened in her chest. She asked, trying to subtly shift the atmosphere. The man's expression shifted, a flicker of discomfort crossing his face. He said, and she could see the walls begin to close in. Feeling the urge to ease his anxiety, Sarah pressed on. "Jake," he replied, a hint of vulnerability lacing his voice. "Sarah," she said with a grin. "But the real fun comes from teasing hats." Jake chuckled but didn't meet her gaze, tracing a finger over the hat's brim. The atmosphere had thickened like a fog, and she could sense the weight pushing down on him. Sarah asked, leaning closer. "I guess I'm used to it," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. She echoed, curiosity piqued. He hesitated, glancing back toward the staff. "You could say that when you do something different, you elicit a reaction, this hat." A rush of insight filled the space between them. Sarah inquired gently, wanting to peel back his layers. His eyes locked onto hers, a mixture of surprise and contemplation. In a way, yeah, the truth in his words tugged at Sarah's heart. She encouraged, hoping to dislodge the knot in his throat. Jake offered a faint smile but didn't respond. Instead, he turned his attention to the staff, their whispers growing louder, the tension morphing into something palpable. Sarah could feel the weight of expectation pushing down on him. She asked suddenly, sensing his discomfort. He blinked, surprised, then nodded. As they exited the cafe, the cool air greeted them like an old friend, invigorating and refreshing. The city buzzed with life, a blend of car horns, laughter, and distant music. Walking side by side felt electric, Sarah's heart racing with unexplainable excitement. She inquired, hoping to draw him out of his shell. "Street art mostly," Jake said, glancing around as if to ensure they were alone. "Murals, installations." Sarah registered his struggle, feeling a tug of empathy. "People can be quick to judge," she replied, "but that doesn't lessen your talent. Sometimes it feels like I'm just a caricature," he said, sadness coating his words. Imagining herself in his shoes, an artist trying to break free from a colorful label, Sarah felt the weight of loneliness creep in. "But you have the power to change that," she encouraged, her voice steady. They strolled down the street, exchanging the layers of their lives, stories of dreams, failures, and laughter laced with fear. With each step, they both began to shed the weight of expectations. She asked, eager to uncover more about him. "Yes, actually." "A mural just a few blocks over," he replied, invigorated by the question. She urged, excitement bubbling within her. As they walked, the sky began to shift, colors melding into stunning shades of orange and pink. The world felt alive, a perfect backdrop for their growing connection. They arrived at a large mural in a nearby alley, and Sarah felt her breath catch in her throat. The artwork was a wild celebration of community, vivid colors and bold symbols that called out with life. She could feel the emotion pouring from it. "Wow," she whispered, absorbing the incredible work before her. "This is stunning, thank you," Jake said, pride blooming in his chest. "This piece means a lot to me." "It's beautiful," she replied, her heart swelling, "but I want to see more of your work." Her words ignited something in him. "There's a festival coming up where I'll be showcasing some new pieces," she replied enthusiastically. Just then, a group of students wandered into the alley, eyes widening as they recognized Jake. One exclaimed, excitement practically radiating off them. Jake's eyes darted towards Sarah, tension creeping back in. "See, this is what I mean," he murmured, anxiety visible on his face. "Just be yourself," she whispered confidently, squeezing his arm. As Jake turned to face the group, he could feel uncertainty tightening around him. But then a sudden burst of calm washed over him as he met the gazes of eager fans. "Yeah, it's me," he said, his voice gaining strength. Sarah watched as he posed for photos, his energy shifting from reluctance to buoyancy. With every snap of the camera, he began to embrace the moment, allowing himself to be seen not just as the artist, but as Jake. One of the students shouted as they turned to leave, their laughter reverberating through the alley. And at that moment, Sarah recognized a shift in Jake. He was letting go of the weight he had carried for so long. He said, his smile broader now. "That felt," she said, feeling proud of him. "Look how easily you embraced it." Jake nodded appreciatively, the tension in his shoulders relaxing. Continuing their walk, they headed toward the park. Daylight was fading, and the warm glow of streetlights began to illuminate their path. Jake's laughter echoed through the air. What once felt like a burden now transformed into freedom. "You know, I think I've been waiting to really be myself," he confessed, slowing down to match her pace. "Then let's break it," Sarah encouraged, her smile bright. "Live authentically." The park lay before them, filled with laughter and the joy of life unfolding. They found a bench nestled under a grand oak tree and sat down, still buzzing from the impromptu photo session. Asked, a flicker of seriousness creeping back into his voice. "Sometimes," she admitted, her heart aching at the thought, "but the truth is, running away doesn't solve anything." He looked at her, the depth of her understanding hitting him like a wave. "You really get it," he said softly. She turned to him, meeting his gaze. "That's the beauty of connection." "I want to be real, Sarah. I want to share my story without the fear of being judged," he said, vulnerability pouring from him like an open wound. "In that case," she said, her voice steady, "let's make a pact. You show me your art and I'll share my dreams." "Deal," he replied, the corners of his mouth lifting slightly. As dusk settled over the park, they continued swapping stories. The air thickened with profound honesty and laughter, painting a clear picture of two souls discovering themselves through each other. Sarah told him about her longing to become a writer, her dreams of crafting stories that would inspire. Jake opened up about his struggles with his identity as an artist, feeling the weight of expectations tugging him back when all he wanted was to flourish. They both learned in those moments that genuine connection has a way of encouraging authenticity. As night fell, they shared hopes, fears, and dreams, inviting vulnerability into the space between them. When the evening came to a close, Sarah felt exhilarated. "I had the best time today," she said, her heart full. "Absolutely," Jake replied, his smile radiant. And as they walked back toward the bustling cafe, a calmness settled between them. They had entered as strangers, one hidden behind a flamboyant hat, the other with a heart full of curiosity, and left as friends, woven together by threads of mutual understanding. As they re-entered the cafe, its warm glow enveloped them in a comforting embrace. Jake's posture had shifted from an anxious muddle to an open arena, a man unafraid to wear his essence on his sleeve. "Let's grab a drink," he said. Sarah laughed, feeling the promise of a bright future shimmer in the air. "You know what? I think you should." In that moment, surrounded by the chatter and laughter of familiar faces, they made a pact to dance through life unafraid of judgment and wearing their identities with pride. Two contrasting visions intermingled, telling stories of courage, vulnerability, and hope. In the weeks to come, as the cafe continued to buzz with familiar energy, the two of them would regularly return, sharing lives, ideas, and adventures. They discovered that life was richer in honesty, and the boundaries they built melted away like the morning mist, revealing endless possibilities and new horizons. Together, they learned to navigate the world side by side, wearing their truths boldly and forging connections, countless dreams and stories still waiting to be unveiled. The man in his hat, alongside the girl who teased him, had become a story of their own, a journey of discovery fueled by courage, authenticity, and the power of connection. It was an ordinary Wednesday afternoon when Sarah stepped into the quaint corner cafe, shaking off the chilly autumn air. The bell above the door chimed softly, announcing her entrance. She reveled in the familiar smell of freshly brewed coffee, content to momentarily escape the gray gloom outside. But as her eyes scanned the room, they landed on a man in the far corner. He sat hunched over a sketch pad, deep in concentration, but it was the enormous, flamboyant hat on his head that drew her attention. It was almost comical, an explosion of bright colors that seemed to shimmer with personality. Was he serious? Did he wear it to be noticed, or was it a joke? Instantly intrigued, Sarah felt a playful urge tugging at her. She approached the counter to order her usual, a creamy vanilla latte, while keeping an eye on the man. The longer she observed him, the more curious she became. What stories were hidden beneath that colorful facade? After receiving her drink, Sarah made her way over to him. She called out, her tone intentionally teasing. The man looked up, surprise flashing across his face before a grin broke through. His response was vibrant, a hint of mischief glinting in his eyes. Sarah laughed as she settled into the chair across from him. "Only if I get a snazzy outfit," she shot back, the warmth of their playful exchange wrapping around them like a cozy blanket. But as the laughter bubbled between them, she noticed the cafe staff exchanging whispers, their glances darting toward the man with increasing urgency. A wave of unease washed over her. Why were they whispering? What were they saying? A spark of tension ignited in the air. She asked, looking into the man's eyes, wanting to draw him out. There was a depth there that intrigued her. He hesitated, his grin fading slightly. "It's complicated," he said softly, glancing over at the staff, who seemed to be watching with bated breath. Sarah lined in, her curiosity growing. "It's more like a shield," he admitted, his voice lowering. "Sarah," she said, feeling the weight of his words and the unguarded honesty reflected in his eyes. Jake looked at her and she sensed the struggle behind his gaze. In a way, yes. As he spoke, Sarah began to notice the tension rising in the cafe. The murmurs among the staff grew louder, a mix of disbelief and fascination swirling around them. Jake shifted in his seat, his comfort unraveling. She asked, her heart aching for him. "Exactly," he replied, a hint of frustration creeping into his voice. She studied him for a moment, feeling the depths of his conflict. "Maybe you could show them more," she suggested, her tone soft yet firm. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You don't know what it's like." "It sounds tiring," Sarah said, feeling a connection that ran deeper than surface-level banter. Jake's brow furrowed momentarily and his gaze fell to the table. Just then the whispers from the staff escalated, culminating in one of them stepping forward. "Jake," she exclaimed, eyes wide with recognition. The atmosphere shifted dramatically. Jake's face paled and Sarah felt the tension in the room tighten around them like a vice. "Maybe I should go," he murmured, a weight of anxiety settling over him. "No, don't run, you made it this far," Sarah urged, her heart racing as she tried to hold onto the moment. He hesitated, looking from her to the staff and back again. Then reluctantly he nodded. "Okay." They rushed out into the crisp air, the sounds of the city enveloping them. As they walked, Sarah could feel Jake's energy shift. The once playful banter faded, replaced by a palpable anxiety. She asked, trying to add some lightness to the tension. "I usually find a quiet spot where I can breathe," he replied, his voice low, but honestly. "Well, I do," Sarah declared, a growing excitement bubbling inside her. "Let's go to the park, it's nearby." As they strolled through the vibrant streets, a mix of bustling energy and distant laughter filled their surroundings. They passed vendors selling colorful trinkets and street performers adding life to the atmosphere, and slowly Sarah noticed some of the tension beginning to dissipate. When they reached the park, a canopy of trees offered a sense of solace, the green leaves swaying gently in the breeze. They settled onto a bench and Sarah took a moment to breathe, hoping Jake would follow suit. "I'm not used to this," he admitted, glancing around as if the park itself was a foreign concept. "Just, you can be free here," Sarah encouraged, her voice low. "You're not the hat, you're Jake." He looked at her, something in his eyes shifting. "I've been trying for so long to be the artist people want me to be." "Well, let's figure it out together," she offered. "What do you want to create?" Jake sighed heavily, glancing down at the ground. "I want to make people feel something more than just comments about my hat." As he spoke, Sarah's heart began to race. Could this moment be the clarity he so desperately sought? Could she really help him break down those walls? Let's do it. He blinked in surprise, a flicker of hope illuminating his features. "Really? Of course there's power in collaboration, and think about it, what if we painted together? You could show the world the real you and I could share my narration through it," she replied, excitement spilling forth. The possibilities danced around them and Jake's expression transformed. Determination began to anchor his features as he considered her words. "I'd love that," he said quietly, a warmth filling the air between them. Just as they began to dream of their artistic alliance, a familiar voice echoed through the park. "Jake," a figure stepped forward, someone Sarah recognized from the cafe. It was one of the staff, wide-eyed and breathless. The tension returned in an instant, like a tightening noose around Jake's throat. He stammered, looking panicked. Sarah exclaimed, grasping his arm as uncertainty swirled like a storm. "Just breathe." The staff member approached, hesitating before speaking. "Jake, everyone is looking for you. You need to come back." Panic surged in Jake's eyes and Sarah felt her heart race. She urged, her voice rising above the din that threatened to smother them. "You can choose what to say," but he turned to her, fear flooding his expression. "I can't, not now." In that moment of tension, Sarah felt a shift around them. It was as if the entire world had paused to watch. She called out, desperation creeping into her voice. "They're not here to judge you, Jake. They're here because your art has moved them." Jake looked torn, his chest heaving as he struggled to find his voice. Could he really face them? Would he be allowed to step beyond the hat and the expectations? With every heartbeat of silence, she could see the battle raging within him. What do you want to be? Sarah pressed, taking a step closer, her gaze unwavering. Finally, in a moment that felt suspended in time, Jake straightened his shoulders, determination washing over him. "I want to show them, Jake," he said, his voice steady. He took a deep breath and turned to the waiting staff. "Okay." And just as he stepped toward them, heart pounding, Sarah watched as something incredible unfolded. A journey was beginning, a journey of authenticity that sparked hope and connection, not only for him but for her as well. But would he manage to break free from the suffocating weight of expectation? And would she find the courage to join him in that leap? In the moment of decision, the world blurred around them. Time seemed suspended, heavy with possibility and the looming question of how this chapter would unfold. The future was unwritten, standing on the precipice between two realities, each filled with its own set of challenges, and neither knew what awaited them just beyond the horizon.